Our presenter today is Jeff Gorter, R3 Continuum's Vice President of Crisis Response Clinical Services. Jeff brings over 29 years of clinical experience in behavioral health consultation and extensive on-site critical incident response to businesses and communities. He has directly responded to the September 11th terrorist attacks, Hurricane Katrina, Virginia Tech shootings, Tohoku earthquake and tsunami, the Sandy Hook, Orlando, and Las Vegas tragedies, and more. He regularly trains and presents on a variety of behavioral health topics and currently serves as an adjunct faculty member at Western Michigan University's MSW graduate program. Thank you for being with us today, Jeff.
Thank you so much, Shane, and thank you to all of you for taking this time and participating in this webinar. I have to admit, I feel oddly prophetic at this moment. The topic here, please understand, the topic that we chose was chosen months ago, and that my slide deck was prepared commensurate with that. And so while this particular webinar is not directly focused on the tensions that have arisen following the Supreme Court's decision overturning Roe versus Wade, much of what we're going to discuss today certainly applies. And so I didn't want to, I didn't want to take credit as if to say, wow, these guys really pulled something together quickly. It is appropriate to the moment, but in a very providential, serendipitous way. So appreciate everybody being here and keeping that in mind. And I request your grace and space as we approach a topic that is, by its very nature, tension-filled, conflictual. So, Shane, what I want to look at is keeping us, you know, as the old saying goes, keep the main thing, which is to say what truly matters here. I quote Brene Brown, one of the most celebrated thinkers and communication experts today, in which she says, I'm not here to be right, I'm here to get it right. And I hope that that is the spirit in which all of us are approaching this. You know, there's another, you know, it's just helpful when we're thinking about this in a workplace conflict, when we're thinking about how do I interface with my colleagues, with my coworkers, with those who report to me, or with those who I report to. You know, so often we lose sight of the fact that my goal here is not to be declared the winner. My goal is not to be, you know, receive a trophy and, you know, the universal acclaim of my coworkers that I am the victorious on the debating field. That is not it. I'm here to get it right. I'm here to say, what do we need to do together to seek understanding? And that's what getting it right means, to have a sense of understanding, a sense of compassion, as you'll see, a sense of empathy with those that I spend 40 plus hours a week with on a regular basis. So, and I think just as preparatory to this, I think it's important to recognize that in this current age, in the age of communication, we are more connected. This is nothing new. People have heard this. We're more connected and yet never more alone than we feel right now. That for many of us, our communications are a mile wide but an inch deep. Where, you know, we post on a regular basis. We may follow other people's meta postings, Instagram, TikTok, all those things. We feel like we have a connection to so many people and we're communicating at so many levels. But particularly those that we interface with in a personal level, on a one-to-one level, you know, that kind of blanket communication misses a key element. It misses what's going on with them. We know how they feel. There are countless postings about, here's how I feel about this issue. Here's how I feel about this matter. Here's where I'm going with this. We know how they feel. We don't know why they feel. We don't know why this is important, why they feel so passionate about some of these issues. We don't know or even care to know each other's stories, which contributes to that lack of understanding. And so I think it's important that we start with that. And part of the reason why we avoid knowing that is why we don't necessarily asks that follow-up question is partly we're driven by a sense of fear, a fear of the unknown. I'm not sure where you'll go with this. I'm not sure how you'll feel if I ask to hear your story. The fear of change, change that would it change or threaten our relationship, or would it change the way I think? Would it change some of my comfortable assumptions? I don't want to hear, I believe what I believe, and I don't want to be encumbered by the facts. So, a lot of why we avoid each other's stories is driven by a sense of fear, of reluctance, understandably, but recognizing again that means we really don't understand each other. And understanding, I think it's clear, we need to be right up front that understanding doesn't mean agreement or endorsement. I don't have to understand you doesn't mean I have to say, all right, I guess you're right. I subscribe. You are the winner. You are absolutely correct. I don't have to agree or endorse your view to understand your view. And I don't lose anything by listening, but I do gain respect. And I think that's the key part. I think people, again, that fear that I talked about, the fear of trying to understand my coworker, my colleague, is driven by if I do I somehow lose something? Am I behind? Am I less effective? And I'm here to disabuse that idea that we don't lose anything by listening, by understanding, but we do gain respect. Now, one of the things that I think has become a almost reflexive position that also gets in the way of understanding, of resolving conflicts or reducing tension and finding a way to work together, is the concept of otherizing, of making somebody else an other. And I have to tell you, it is the death of agreement and understanding. Otherizing just shuts the door to any possibility of being able to have a productive dialogue that results in understanding or mutual respect. Otherizing, quite frankly, is intellectually lazy. It's ascribing, it's a quick, simple, easy, non-nutritious answer to, they feel that way because they all, and you can insert you can insert your a race, a gender, an age, a political affiliation, their role at work, where they live, how they style their hair, what music they listen to. We can insert all of that. It's because they all think, feel, act the same way, feel the same way, do the same thing. They're all like that. That is otherizing. That is making somebody else not a person, not an individual with a story, as we said before, but making them a construct, an object almost, a thing that is easy, therefore, to disregard and dismiss. And I bring this up, I challenge this because I really, truly feel passionately about this, that otherizing dehumanizes them. It's why it's so easy to cast aspersions. It's why it's so easy to say things in social media that we wouldn't otherwise say face-to-face to somebody. I couldn't imagine saying those things, but when I otherize them, when I make them something else, why then it's easy to spew all sorts of negative connotations towards them because I have effectively dehumanized them. I've reduced their humanity. And as a consequence, that is not without its price. As a consequence, it diminishes you. It makes you less of a person, operating with less integrity, operating with less authenticity. It's, as I said, it's intellectually lazy. It's not, quite frankly, and I hope this doesn't sound sermonizing, but it is not worthy of you. It is certainly not worthy to others who are the recipients of that. And so I feel like it's important that we start by calling out what I think is the biggest stumbling block right here at the beginning.
I think that's a great way to put it too, especially, like you said, in the day of all social media and everything. I know we've all probably heard the term keyboard warrior, but it's, you're sitting behind a keyboard just making these generalized statements, and you would never say that to somebody's face typically, and it's just kind of opened up that door to allow people to do that. And, that's why, especially on Twitter, I've seen a lot of people make fake accounts and everything like that, because they just feel like they can spew it, but they know they wouldn't want it to come back to them type of thing. So it's just that's a very good point that I think is, a lot more normal than we think it normally is.
Right. No, and if I had to look somebody in the eye and make those statements or describe my views, odds are they would change. Odds are they would be different. And let me engage in a bit of a thought experiment, because I think the antidote to otherwising and the conflict that assumes from that inevitably is to assume the positive, to start with an assumption where I want to view, well, what else could be going on? What is the positive here in this situation? So my thought experiment is to imagine that you're driving down the highway, minding your own business, maintaining appropriate speed. You're listening to music, you're thinking, you're driving along, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, from your left, all of a sudden this car comes zooming at 95 miles an hour, and they cut you off and they continue down your path. What would most people's reactions be? Shane, I'm going to put you on the spot. What would your reaction be?
I would be pretty upset, actually, right off the jump. Like, what the heck's going on? What are they doing?
Yes. Yeah, and understandably so. It was frightening. It was startling. It was unexpected. And so that's a very normal and understandable reaction. But what if somehow you were able to find out or somehow could discern that in that car was a frantic, panicking parent who is taking their child who's been wounded to the hospital. They're wounded, and I'm trying to rush them to the hospital. Or what if it's a couple, and the woman is final stages of childbirth, and they don't want to have the baby be born in the car, and they are rushing again to the hospital to try and address this. It's, what if I knew their story? What if I knew their need? What if I knew their urgency? What if I understood exactly why that this action is going on? Would that change my thoughts, my feelings, reactions to it? And again, I'm going to put you on the spot. What would you? Oh,
yeah, it totally would. If I could tell, if it's like, it would be one of those situations where it's like, I wish we had a motorcade to get you to the hospital or get you wherever you need to go. It would completely change everything about my outlook on that.
Exactly. For most people, it would be, it would go from outrage to concern almost instantaneously. It would be, wow, I hope they make it. I hope everything's okay. Man, I wonder if there's other things that could be done to help support, like you say. Is there a way to contribute to this, to a successful outcome, rather than using my rather limited sign language to express my outrage? I think if we knew their story, if I began by saying, wow, I have to, what if I assume the positive and say it must be an emergency, it must be something going on. Now, here's the key. This is the secret part of that. Even if that's not true, even if I found out that wasn't the case, even if it was somebody who was being reckless and irresponsible, even if it's not true, I am still ahead. My integrity has been served. My emotional balance has been restored. It doesn't necessarily require that I ever find out what the real story was, but assuming the positive works on me. It puts me in a better position, in a healthier position, to be able to respond to this, to the event. And I think that is something that is, again, subtle, and a lot of people wrestle with it, but I think it's in our own best interest it's not like I'm letting them off the hook, or I'm looking to the other way when people are acting inappropriately, or I'm, giving a blank check to anybody to act however they want, to think however they want. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that that's the first step in controlling my reactions and making sure I am operating in a way that is consistent with my integrity, where I am being the person that I want to be or that I aspire to be. And that for most of us, assuming the positive puts us in a better light, much and potentially could be true. For all I know, that might be the story, and it's less burdensome to me if I'm able to go with that than immediately flipping into otherwising. That's just how those people drive. That's how people who drive that car drive. It's the antidote to otherizing, and it is helpful and to our own best interest as well. So we start by getting our thinking straight, but there are some, that's the strategy, okay? But there are some tactics, some specific things we can do, 3 steps that we can take to help achieve or maximize that sense of understanding with coworkers, particularly if I'm in a workplace situation in which there is a strong polarization, in which we've got people who have opposing, differing views. And it begins with three steps. The first is separating the person from the problem. The second is being able to articulate the other person's concern. And the third is letting go of the zero-sum game in interpersonal interactions. So let's look at each of those with a little more detail. So first, separate the person from the problem. It's kind of a truism, but to say the problem is the problem, the person isn't the problem. That's a subtle form of otherizing. If there is a conflict in the workplace, if there is an issue that is being wrestled with either in our workplace or in our community or in our country, the intellectually lazy thing is to say, well, I'll tell you what the problem is. That person is the problem. They are the problem. You're the problem. Well, first thing we have to do is separate the person from the problem. The problem is the problem. The person isn't a problem. And so that helps us to recognize that we don't want to let anger, either your anger or their anger, drive the interaction. Anger is momentarily satisfying. I can understand it. It may be understandable. It may be warranted. It may be a completely recognizable emotion to have given whatever issue we might be wrestling with. I'm not saying that we should never have anger, but if I allow that anger to drive the interaction, as I said, it's momentarily satisfying, but rarely leads to a positive outcome. I have yet to ever hear anybody, and Shane, you can correct me if you're the one exception that proves the rule, but I've never heard anybody who said, your shouting and pounding on the table has made me realize I need to rethink my position. And maybe I think you're right. I think you've got a good point there.
I'm not correcting you on that one.
I don't know if anybody has ever reacted with that. So it's important to recognize while the anger may very well be justified, understandable, letting the anger drive the interaction is not likely to resolve anything. It's not likely to come to a positive conclusion. It's more likely to foster that sense of blame and otherizing, as we've talked about before. And so we want to start, but one of the best ways of separating the person from the problem is to assume positive intent. I wonder why they feel so strongly about this. I wonder what their story is. I wonder what's gone on in their life or what their lived experiences were that lead them to feel so passionately about this. Just simply having that sort of curiosity, that sort of openness to a possible positive intent immediately puts you in a much more effective problem-solving position than if I simply let my emotions run wild and half the day. So we begin by separating the person from the problem. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying if you are looking to move forward at all, that's the first step. The second is being able to articulate the other's concern, being able to put it in your own words. Because at the end of the day, and I think this is human nature universally is that we all have a strong desire to be understood, to be heard, to know that somebody else gets it. And until that happens, until I think the other person understands me, understands what's going on or my position, until that happens, I'm going to say it again. I'm going to say it louder. I'm going to say it with gestures. I'm going to say it in such a way as I'm trying to get it. I'm just going to repeat it until I think they get it. And so, again, until they feel understood, the fight continues. And I know this is challenging, but if you are able to put into your own words what you hear them saying, to say, wait a second, I just want to break here right now. So what I hear you saying is this. I hear you saying you feel so passionate about this because of this, because of why, this is why you feel the way you feel, or that this is your stance on this. Do I have that right? Being able to put it, you could simply parrot it, or you could put it in your own words, but you could say, what I hear you saying is this. Do I have that right? Understand, by doing that, you're not, again, endorsing. You're not agreeing. You're not saying that's a better position than mine. You're not in any way doing anything other than saying message received. Got it. As they, as was, if anybody has seen the most recent, Top Gun movie, it's kind of a military term. When a message is sent, you say, Roger that. Roger, got that. That's a way to indicate message received. I heard it. I understand it. We're ready to move forward. So being able to articulate the other concern lets them know the message has been received and you got it. It indicates respect. It helps them feel that, they have been heard, and therefore they're able to move to the next step. When somebody feels heard or understood, when they feel they've been given the respect and dignity that of having their position simply acknowledged. Yep, got it. Doesn't mean I agree. Doesn't mean I endorse it. It just means I got it. That opens the door to a wide range of possibilities. Once somebody feels understood, they're willing to compromise. They're willing to talk about alternative solutions. They're willing to perhaps even give up their position because they feel respected and understood. But until that happens, it ain't going nowhere. And as the quote says, it's, a lot of people, again, that fear that some people have that prevents us from understanding, it's better. A better understanding of somebody else's thinking will lead you to revise your own views about a situation. Maybe or maybe not, but that's not a cost. That doesn't come at any detriment to you. It doesn't cost you anything to understand their point of view. It is a benefit. It actually allows you to reduce the conflict and advance your own self-interest. It allows a solution that is mutually agreeable to potentially happen. And so understanding doesn't cost you anything, but it does move the ball forward.
I know we've got 5 or 6 minutes left, but I just wanted to point out that was a great point of if you have no respect, if you don't respect the other person, and you don't respect the opinion, there can be zero compromise. Neither of you would ever reach that point where you're, solid and can say okay, I understand that or anything like that. It just won't work. It just won't happen. So I think that was an awesome point to bring up.
Thank you. No, you're absolutely right. And then the final point is to let go of the zero-sum game. Game theory is sort of an approach that has gained a lot of traction lately. But game theory suggests that if one person wins, then another must lose. It's transactional. It's an if-then scenario. If somehow you win, then it must mean that I gave something up. And the reality is, outside of casinos, that just simply doesn't work well in most human interactions. Very few situations are win-lose in that sort of exclusive way. Most leadership, and by leadership I mean personal leadership as well as perhaps organizational leadership, because certainly executives have found this to be true as well, that leadership calls for respect and compromise. To be able to hear and be heard is the key to being able to move forward. And so letting go of that idea that somehow something was lost if we achieved a level of understanding. It's not, it just simply isn't that transactional. Now, I'm not naive. I want to be very clear. I'm not trying to paint some sort of rosy picture that is divorced from the current intense polarization that is indeed present today. And so there are times when after I've made the effort and it still hasn't helped, I need to escalate it. I need to make sure that I am maintaining safety first and foremost before anything else. So when do I need to escalate it to a supervisor? Well, did you catch that? When I've made the effort and it hasn't helped, because this assumes that you've made the effort, that you've tried to articulate there. You've checked your own tendency towards otherizing, and you're able to put into words their position and then be able to move. You've let go of the thought that finding some kind of understanding means that we've lost something. So you have to make the effort first. It's surprising how often we give up our own agency, our own ability to influence a situation by saying, well, I'm going to wait until they do it. I'm going to wait and I'm going to put them in charge of how I am feeling emotionally. That's rarely a recipe for success. So I have to make sure that I've done everything I can to try and resolve this. When do I escalate it? When conflicts are getting in the way of getting the job done. Because again, this webinar here is about how do we as coworkers, as colleagues, interface and manage tension. How do we disagree without being disagreeable? If it continues, despite my best efforts, to get in the way of getting the job done, I don't have to like somebody to get the job done. I mean, that'd be great. I wish I liked everybody, and I hope they like me, but I don't have to necessarily like them to get the job done. But if the job's not getting done, then we need to escalate it. And obviously, above all, if I feel that there is a point of safety, well, if threats are being made, if innuendos are being implied, if there is a suggestion that towards physical force or anything of that nature, immediately escalating that, as all companies have policies and procedures against such a thing. So I don't want to again present something that I think is a universal panacea. I'm just simply saying I got to make sure that I have done everything on my part. And if it still is either getting in the way of work or getting in the way of safety, then I need to escalate it to a supervisor or to HR. And so, Shane, I just kind of want to end with this closing thought. Marie Curie, who is, a kind of an odd one to bring in here to an interpersonal challenge. She is celebrated Nobel Prize winning, two-time Nobel Prize winning, and the first woman to ever win the Nobel Prize in physics, who has advanced science in such a tremendous way during her lifetime. But this quote that she had has always spoken to me, that nothing in life is to be feared. It's only to be understood. Now is the time to understand more so that we may fear less. And so it's my hope for all of you listeners that we may strive for that understanding, let go of that fear, and be able to move forward together in a more positive situation at this time of great polarization.
Fantastic. And I think, we've got like literally about 30 seconds till we hit our half-hour mark. And I know we try to keep these short and simple. But while we're here, I want to invite everybody to our next webinar, also with Jeff. It will be on Tuesday, July 12th, titled Coordinating Compassionate Care After Disruption, Not Your Typical Counseling. So you can register all over the page, and there will be some more information sent out about that webinar after. But Jeff, before we leave, I know we just hit the 30 mark. I want to ask one question because I think there are a few folks asking questions in here that are maybe in leadership roles. But how can you bring something up? Say you have two employees that are struggling to, they're button heads all the time and they are not reaching a compromise at all. How would you kind of like share this information without attacking them or like really calling them out directly? And is there any services that can be used for that?
So, if I think use this webinar as a springboard, and simply say, hey, I attended a webinar. I thought I had a couple of good points. I'd love to talk with you about this and get your reaction to it, and see if they would watch it independently, if they would watch it with you, or they may say, no, I'm not interested. But being able to simply use it as a springboard and to say, hey, I think we can do, if I'd really love your thoughts. I'd really love to understand your reactions to this. Let's do this and then circle back together and talk about it. So if it's presented as, I want to know more about you, not like, hey, you really need this, and I can't wait until you listen to this because then you'll be better. It's got to be, I'm using this as a way to help me understand you even better.